We are continuing our conversation after the State of the State coverage. And Robert, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about UNLV Med School. What is the status of the building, the med school?
Well, in the last session, the governor had an anonymous donor, and he matched the anonymous donor. It was $25 million and $25 million. And then there were other donors who were willing, for example, the Ingolstadt Foundation was willing to put another $14 million. You know, from my knowledge of what was going on in the background, there were other donors lining up who will not be named because, you know, they were donors who didn't actually pull the trigger. And the reason they didn't is that the popular president of UNLV, Len Jessup, who's now the president at the Claremont Graduate University, the highly prestigious Claremont Graduate University, was pushed out of his job by the chancellor and the regents. And what that did is poison the well with the donors. And so those donors have withdrawn support. And even the $50 million is in question because they were going to do a building that was essentially a health sciences library that was going to be for everyone. And the donor was not pleased with that direction. And as a result, the money was withdrawn just temporarily. I think the donors left it in the university account, but it can't be deployed on that specific project, but it could be deployed for another medical building if one was proposed. But that was supposed to go to the interim finance committee where those things are decided between legislative sessions to allow the state share to be allocated. And that just went completely away. And now we're back to square one. One of the things the governor could do, and this is why the rainy day fund is always so tempting, is he could re-engage the donors. And it may take the governor to do that. I don't think NSHE's going to fix this. The governor and the legislature could re-engage the donors and could put together even a commission on finding the best solution to the med school, but also do a challenge grant where he ups the amount that the state's willing to put into the facility. I mean, you know, the state's put more money into the Pennington Student Achievement Center at UNR and the, engineering, the 7th engineering building. You might want to cough up a little money for dear old UNLV over here. And because even no matter what, most of the buildings, by the way, in the UNR medical complex are almost all 100% state. We're looking at something like, even if you did 2/3 donation and 1/3 state or 50-50 match, it would still be a bargain for the state to get that. And it would take Sisolak's leadership. And you know what? He's a can-do sort of guy. He was can-do on that stadium. One of the things I was surprised he didn't mention was that stadium or his great successes in Clark County. So, if anyone can get that through, Mr. Sisolak working with the legislature would seem a good prospect.
And you think rainy day funding is where this money can come from?
If you can say, look, this makes sense to spend if you could re-engage the donors, build their trust, get them back in the process, and get them to put more resources in this next round, then you can get to the $150 to $200 million that you're going to need for this completion of this facility. And so if the state could commit, so far it's committed $25 million. If it commit 50 or 75 or $100 million, that would be something, this is the most important, higher ed facility, arguably one of the most important projects in Nevada would be the establishment of a larger medical school. And here's why. We only have 60 students. We have 2,000 applicants. I bet the next 100 students were qualified. We'd like to get to 180. There are regions that have 200, 250, 300 students cranked out of a med school. And that's where you get your doctor shortage fixed. We can't get to that if we don't build this building, and we're not going to be able to move that building forward with the stalemate that's happened post the departure of Len Jessup. It's going to take something as bold as the governor's and the legislature's engagement on something like that, and I'm hoping they do it because, again, and Sisolak is aware of this. I mean, Sisolak's got his finger on all this sort of stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if he had some, sort of notion of how to move this forward.
I'm hoping you're taking a trip up to Carson City in a few weeks and maybe testifying.
Well, it's always fun to take those trips north.
I bet. What jumped out at you the most?
There were three things that jumped out at me the most. One of them was that Sisolak said that he wants to raise the minimum wage. He didn't say to what. $15 is the number that's been put around over the last few years. We have a $7.25 minimum wage right now. I doubt he's going to more than double it in this next session. I would like to know, where we're going to be going with that. The other thing he put out was that he wants to put more money towards affordable housing. Reno has a huge housing crunch right now because they have built the Tesla Gigafactory, and you cannot get housing there. So is that going to be going more towards Reno? Is it going to be going more towards here? If so, who's going to be building that? These are details that need to be worked out.
If I remember correctly, it's a small amount of money. I think it was $10 million.
Right, it wasn't a whole lot of money, right?
Right.
The other thing that I looked up and went, whoa, when he said it was that he wants to move towards having collective bargaining for state employees. I did not mishear that, did I, Rob?
No.
So that's an interesting thing. A governor of a state wants the state employees to unionize. I'm going to be following that.
Yeah, that might have been the most explicitly Democratic thing he said. And I mean big D, not small d,
Right.
Democratic on that one, yeah. And the housing problem is interesting because Reno was never really set up the way Vegas is to boom. So Vegas can scale its housing industry at like a moment's notice to how much demand is present due to relocation. It also has an enormous rental inventory that Reno doesn't have. So, you know, Vegas has always had this pattern of master plan community development where not only do you have single family detached housing in the center and sort of, you know, in the preserved parts of the master plan and the most expensive housing on the hill and less, but as you go along the corridors all around here, you see that there's packaged up next to commercial development is all kinds of multifamily housing. So Las Vegas has a large rental housing stock that's flexible and can you know, accommodate growth without having house prices spike. Reno's not really designed for growth, so even a modest bump in employment, you know, Reno's still growing slower than Las Vegas, and I don't mean in even just a percentage terms, in absolute terms rather. I mean, even in percentage terms, I should say, Las Vegas is still exceeding the growth in Reno. But Las Vegas hasn't had the same kind of sharp spike in house price. It has a growth in house price. The rental price is up, obviously, but it's nowhere near the level of crisis of Reno. Reno's going to need more than $10 million to fix that. Reno's going to have to start entitling growth. It's going to want to have to grow. It's like, it reminds me of Tucson. They wouldn't build the Beltway. They looked at Phoenix and said, it's the Disney desert. It looks like a little version of LA. You know, they looked down at us and they said, oh my God, this place has become a little mini version of LA. Well, guess what? You're going to have to be a little mini version of the Bay Area. If you take the Bay Area's business, you better start building the Bay Area's housing. And you better do it better because the Bay Area's got the worst house price problems. So what do you think the business is doing there? They came to you for affordability. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things you were selling was affordability. So this has to be fixed. And the governor really, I think, is committed to fixing it, including in northern Nevada, because the mayor of Reno, who's one of the leading Democrats in the north, and really came on strong for his campaign. You know, didn't lay back and say, well, he's a Southerner, so we're both Democrats, but I'm going to sort of half-heartedly endorse. She endorsed all the way. She wants this fixed. And my guess is that the governor will help fix this.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.